The Alpha King visited his servant unannounced. What he saw made him reject his chosen Luna. The night was unusually quiet in the kingdom of Blackthorn. Alpha King Damian Cross stood by the window of his private chamber, looking out at the moonlit forest that stretched beyond the palace walls. Sleep would not come to him, though he had tried for hours. His mind was heavy with thoughts of the wedding that awaited him in 3 weeks' time. Damian was the most powerful alpha the kingdom had seen in generations. He commanded respect wherever he walked, and his word was law across every pack under his rule. Yet despite his strength, he felt a strange emptiness inside him. The mate bond, the sacred connection every wolf longed to feel, had never once stirred in his chest, not even when he stood beside Seraphina Vane, the woman chosen to be his Luna. Seraphina had been selected by the pack elders for her noble bloodline and her family's influence across the northern territories. She was elegant, sharp-tongued, and admired by many at court. To the outside world, she appeared to be the perfect match for a king. Damian had accepted the arrangement out of duty, believing that perhaps love was not meant for a king like him. Duty came first. It always had. Unable to rest, Damian decided to take a walk through the palace halls, something he rarely did at such a late hour. The corridors were silent, lit only by the soft glow of hanging lanterns. His footsteps echoed against the stone floors as he passed portrait after portrait of his ancestors, each one watching him with painted eyes. As he turned a corner near the servants' quarters, a sound stopped him in his tracks. It was faint, almost swallowed by the silence of the night, but unmistakable. Someone was crying. Damian was not a king who ignored such things, even if the person crying was merely a servant. He followed the sound until he stood before a plain wooden door at the far end of the hall. He knocked once, out of habit rather than necessity, and pushed the door open. Inside, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest, was a young woman he barely recognized. Her name was Elena Hart, one of the kitchen servants who had worked quietly in the palace for the past 2 years. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and she never drew attention to herself. Damian had passed her in the halls perhaps a dozen times without ever truly noticing her. Tonight, however, he noticed everything. Elena's eyes were red from crying, and there was a heaviness in the room, a sadness so thick it seemed to fill every corner. She looked up at him in shock, quickly wiping her face and struggling to stand. "Your Majesty," she whispered, bowing her head. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect. Please forgive me for disturbing the night." Damian raised a hand to stop her from apologizing further. "Why are you crying?" Elena hesitated, her fingers twisting the fabric of her sleeve. "It's nothing, Your Majesty. Just a difficult day." But Damian did not believe her. He stepped further into the small room, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. Then he saw it. On the small table beside her bed sat a letter, half crumpled, as if she had tried to throw it away and changed her mind. He recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to Seraphina. "May I?" he asked, though he was already reaching for it. Elena's face went pale, but she did not stop him. Damian unfolded the letter and read it slowly. The words were cold and cruel, informing Elena that she would be dismissed from the palace at the end of the month, without explanation, without a chance to defend herself, and without any references that might help her find work elsewhere. It was signed simply, Luna Seraphina Vane. Damian's jaw tightened. "Why would she dismiss you? Have you done something wrong?" Elena lowered her eyes. "I don't know, Your Majesty. I have tried to do my work well. I thought perhaps I displeased her somehow, but she never told me what I did." Something about the way Elena spoke, careful and guarded, told Damian there was more to the story than she was willing to share. He had ruled long enough to recognize fear when he saw it, and Elena's fear was not simply about losing her position. It was something deeper. "Tell me the truth," he said gently, his voice losing its usual sharpness. "I am not here to punish you. I only wish to understand." Elena took a shaky breath. Slowly, she began to explain. Over the past several months, Seraphina had grown increasingly demanding, often finding fault with even the smallest things. If a dress was not pressed perfectly, if tea was served a few degrees too warm, if a servant did not bow quickly enough, Seraphina would grow furious. She had a habit of humiliating the staff in front of others, calling them foolish, careless, unworthy of serving in a king's palace. Many servants had already resigned, rather than continue enduring her treatment. Elena had tried to stay quiet and simply do her work, hoping to avoid becoming a target. But 2 days ago, she had accidentally knocked over a vase while cleaning Seraphina's chambers. It had been an honest accident, and Elena had immediately apologized and offered to replace it. Seraphina, however, had been furious, accusing her of clumsiness and disrespect. She had threatened to make sure Elena never found work in any noble household again. "I didn't want to bother anyone with this," Elena said, her voice trembling. "Everyone knows she will be Luna soon. Who would believe a servant over her?" Damian felt something stir inside him, a mixture of anger and disbelief. As king, he had always tried to be fair and just, ensuring that his people, no matter their status, were treated with dignity. The idea that such cruelty had been happening within his own palace, right under his nose, troubled him deeply. But it was not only anger that Damian felt. As he stood there, watching Elena wipe away the last of her tears, he became aware of something else, something he had never experienced before. A warmth spread through his chest, gentle, yet undeniable, pulling him toward her. It was faint at first, but the longer he looked at her, the stronger it grew. The mate bond. Damian had waited his entire life to feel this connection, and he had begun to believe it would never come, that perhaps he was destined to rule without ever knowing what it meant to have a true mate. Yet here it was, quiet and unmistakable, drawing him toward a servant girl he had barely noticed until tonight. He said nothing about it at first, not wanting to overwhelm her with such news, while she was already distressed. Instead, he took the crumpled letter from her hands and folded it carefully. "You will not be dismissed," he said firmly, "and you will not be treated this way again. I give you my word." Elena looked up at him, confusion and hope mixing in her expression. "Your Majesty, I don't wish to cause trouble. Please, I only want to keep my position." "You have caused no trouble," Damian replied. "The trouble was caused by someone else." He left her chambers that night with his mind racing. He needed to know the full truth, not just from Elena, but from others who might have experienced the same treatment. The next morning, Damian quietly requested private meetings with several members of the household staff, assuring them that anything they shared would be kept confidential, and that no harm would come to them for speaking honestly. One by one, the servants shared similar stories. A young man who worked in the stables spoke of being blamed for mistakes he never made. An older woman who managed the laundry described being humiliated in front of guests over a minor mistake. Each story painted the same picture. Seraphina Vane, though charming and graceful in public, was a very different person behind closed doors, someone who used her power to belittle those who could not defend themselves. Damian listened carefully to every account, his resolve growing stronger with each one. He realized that he could not, in good conscience, allow such a person to become Luna of his kingdom. A Luna was meant to be a protector of the people, someone who led with compassion and fairness, not fear. That afternoon, Damian called for a formal gathering in the Great Hall, inviting the pack elders, the council members, and Seraphina herself. Word spread quickly through the palace that something important was about to happen, and by the time the hall filled, tension hung thick in the air. Seraphina arrived dressed elegantly, her expression calm and composed, clearly unaware of what was about to unfold. She took her place beside Damian, offering the court a graceful smile. Damian did not waste time with lengthy introductions. He stepped forward and addressed the gathered court directly. "I have called you here today because information has come to my attention that I cannot ignore," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "It concerns the conduct of Lady Seraphina Vane toward the members of this household." Seraphina's smile faltered slightly, though she quickly composed herself. "Your Majesty, I'm not sure what you mean." Damian continued, his tone firm. "Over the past several months, multiple members of our staff have endured unfair treatment, harsh words, and threats to their livelihoods, simply for making small, honest mistakes. I have spoken with several of them personally, and their accounts are consistent." Murmurs spread through the hall. Seraphina's composure cracked slightly as she glanced around at the gathered elders. "Your Majesty, surely you don't believe the word of servants over mine." "I believe the truth when I hear it," Damian replied calmly, "and I have heard it many times over. from many different people, all telling the same story. He then called forward two of the servants who had bravely agreed to speak before the court. With trembling voices but steady resolve, they shared their experiences, describing the humiliation and fear they had endured under Seraphina's treatment. The hall grew silent as their words painted a picture far different from the poised and gracious woman most of the court believed Seraphina to be. Seraphina attempted to defend herself, insisting the servants were exaggerating or misunderstanding her intentions, but her protests grew weaker with each passing moment. The elders, who had once championed her as the ideal choice for Luna, now exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence in her shaken. Finally, Damian turned to face her directly. "A Luna is meant to care for our people, to lead with kindness and strength, not to rule through fear. I cannot, in good conscience, bind myself and this kingdom to someone who treats our people this way." The hall fell utterly silent. "I reject you, Seraphina Vane, as my chosen Luna." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Seraphina's face went pale, disbelief and anger flashing across her features. "You cannot do this. The elders approved this match. Our families." "The elders will understand," Damian said calmly, glancing toward the council, several of whom nodded slowly in agreement, unable to argue against what they had just witnessed. "A king's duty is not only to his bloodline, but to his people. I will not ignore their suffering for the sake of tradition." Seraphina, realizing the court would not side with her, stormed out of the hall in humiliation, her plans for the throne crumbling before her eyes. In the following days, she quietly left the kingdom altogether, her reputation too damaged to remain among the very people she had once looked down upon. With the matter resolved, Damian turned his attention to Elena. He requested her presence in the great hall the following morning, this time with far fewer people in attendance, wanting to give her the space to process everything without the weight of a full court watching her every reaction. When Elena arrived, nervous and unsure why she had been summoned, Damian met her with a gentle expression, so different from the commanding king she had seen just days before. "Elena," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." He explained the mate bond to her, how it connected two souls destined to be together, and how he had felt it the moment he saw her that night in her chamber. Elena listened in stunned silence, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "I understand this is a lot to take in," Damian continued. "You never asked for any of this, but I want you to know that you are not simply a servant to me. You are someone I wish to know, to protect, and to build a future with, if you are willing." Elena's eyes filled with tears, though this time they were different from the ones he had seen before. "I never imagined anyone would truly see me," she whispered. "I was always taught to stay quiet, to not draw attention." "You never have to hide again," Damian said, stepping closer. "Not from me, and not within these walls." Elena took a deep breath, allowing herself, perhaps for the first time in her life, to believe that she deserved kindness and happiness. Slowly, she nodded. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom watched as their king courted Elena properly, taking the time to know her heart before making any further declarations. The staff who had once feared speaking out found new confidence under her growing presence, knowing that someone who understood their struggles now stood close to the throne. When Damian finally presented Elena to the kingdom as his true Luna, the celebration was unlike anything Blackthorn had seen in years. The people, especially those who had served quietly and thanklessly for so long, rejoiced, knowing that fairness and kindness had finally found their place within the palace walls. Elena Hart, once overlooked and unseen, became a Luna remembered not for her title, but for the compassion she brought to every person she met, proving that true strength often begins with a kind and honest heart.